Hi guys, Transit Diaries here. The title of this video is Am I a Psychopath? Now the reason I'm asking that question is there's these off-the-shelf tests effectively that you could do yourself. You could do for yourself, you know, what is a psychopath and the traits of a psychopath or whatnot. To be quite honest, I'm not really convinced about these. Or should I say, put it in another context, maybe they're true, but however, I think the majority of us have these traits. Let me put it this way. It's not just Charles Manson, Ted Bundy, or Adolf Hitler. I actually think we all have those traits. It's just wondering how far we're willing to push them. So again, it's just my personal attack on this somewhat simplistic view about good and evil, you know, which I think the whole concept of that is an absolute insult to Western philosophy in the first place. You know, it spits right in the face of the post-Enlightenment period. We surely now know more about human psychology than to be making these somewhat romantic or simplistic arguments. Now, as I make this argument, I'm going to compare myself to maybe what I would call my nemesis. Let me put it this way. And obviously I don't, you know, on a celebrity scale fall into the same category, but that might be actually a virtue of mine in that this test might actually prove, ironically, that that's actually a virtue of mine as opposed to this nemesis. Now, I picked Russell Brand. The reason I picked Russell Brand for this is because there's only a year, there's actually 1 year between us age-wise. He was born in London, I was born in Guildford. Both of us, I don't think we came from impoverished backgrounds. That wouldn't be accurate. Maybe working class backgrounds. We're both white. I mean, we have quite a lot in common in many ways. And yet we're completely at polar ends of the political sphere. I'm a big C conservative, and he's, in an American context, a liberal, and in a European context, a Labour supporter. So we're completely opposed on the political spheres. So I just wanted to do this video, do the sociopath test. Now, I was going to say psychopath test, but personally I think the only difference between the two is that probably the psychopath actually kills. Maybe that's where that line is crossed. So I don't think Mr. Brand is guilty of that. I can definitely speak for myself, I'm not. So we'll stick to sociopaths at the moment. So let's begin. Number 1. Motivated. These are all traits now of a sociopath. That are 10 traits that are accepted by the international community as traits of a sociopath. So number 1, motivated by personal desire. So am I motivated by personal desire? Yes. Guilty. I'm unapologetic that I'm a self-interested biological being. I can only speak again for myself. As long as there's clear rules about the free market system, like the lengths that I can go to, the boundaries, like clear boundaries that we all have to work in, clear envelopes, should I say, that we all have to work in. You know, I have no problem. I'm unapologetic that I am motivated by my own personal desire. Yes, guilty. Now, again, it's up to you to make the assumption. Do you think Russell Brand is motivated by personal desire? Probably is. Yeah, that's just my guess now, but he's not here to defend himself. So we're probably both guilty in that regard. So that's a draw on that one. So, number 2, highly manipulative. Sorry, my accent betrays me. Am I highly manipulative? Well, yes, I have my moments. Do I manipulate people? Yes, absolutely. For example, when I got my windows changed recently, and I had the work they were doing wasn't that great. So what I done was they kept. I made a complaint, and they kept promising me they would come and fix the problem. 6 months later, I still no comeback. Constant calls, constant emails, and still no comeback. So what I done is I done a job, and I needed windows, so I got them, the same company, to actually supply the windows on that job. And so the usual thing is you put down your deposit. So what I done is I put down a deposit, which was only 1/5 of the total cost. They went ahead and made the windows. They delivered the windows to that job, fitted the windows to that job, and they actually done a good job, particularly at that time. They just didn't do a good job on my own house. And so then obviously they asked me to settle up for the full amount, and I told them I wouldn't settle up until they fixed the windows on my house. So you might say that's manipulation. Yes, you're right, guilty. Unapologetically. Guess what happened? They fixed the windows of my house. I settled up with them. Smiles all around. But is that manipulation? Absolutely. But I'm afraid I'm in a free market system. You have to be quite clever and resourceful. I'm not going to apologise. Yes, guilty of manipulation. Again, is Russell Brand guilty of this? You make that call. Or can he be guilty of manipulation? I don't know. You make that call. Okay, moving on. Number 3, surface charm. Poor you, Mr. Brand. I think you win this one. I'm afraid the proof is in the eating of the pie on this one. You're a global figure, a household name. I'm a struggling carpenter trying to make ends meet. So I think we can safely say that you have more surface charm than I do. Depending on what context you put that one in. So I'm afraid I lose, you win on that one. Okay, number 4, lack of sympathy. Okay, am I guilty of lack of sympathy? At times, I might be, how could I say, misinterpreted as being lack of sympathy for people. For example, I just believe one of the big problems we're living in society at the moment is we live in an inconsequential world. You make bad decisions presently, and you don't suffer the consequences of making bad decisions. So I think it is to have sympathy or empathy or compassion for people, you have to allow them to live in a consequential world. For example, to spoil a child, for example, if you have a lot of resources to outlay on a child, it is easy to spoil that child. Of course, I don't have that problem because I don't have a lot of resources. Now, I'm not saying for one, I don't know, I'm not making that distinction with Russell Brand. I'm merely saying that it's not compassionate to spoil a child. It's easy, or you might say it's a lack of sympathy to actually to spoil that child, because you'll give them a false sense of how the world works, and someday they're going to be freight trained by the cold hard truth that the world does have quite harsh consequences for making, or it should do at least, have consequences for making bad decisions. So it's not being compassionate. So in that context, I would say I am compassionate. I'll give you another example. If people, want to drive at 150 miles an hour, I believe, we set a speed limit, which, for example, here is 75. So if you want to drive 150 mile an hour, you plow into the crash barrier or whatever, lose both legs, end up in a wheelchair, if you're lucky and you haven't killed anyone else, no, I'm sorry, I have no sympathy for you. The compassion was in laying down that law in the first place. That's about as much compassion. If you want to cross that law, then you suffer the consequences of crossing that law. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to rush to that person's aid and say, oh, you're a victim, it's because the law wasn't properly explained to you. No, I'm afraid it was quite clear. The signs are there to see. If you want to cross that barrier, you suffer the consequences of it. I have very little compassion for you from that point onwards. But I might come across as a little wooden or sterile, maybe, emotionally. But if I'm quite honest, I think that's because I'm quite proud of my masculinity, and I would say that is more from me. Says more about me and the male psyche than it does about my own individual views. So that's anyway my take on it again. But would I be considered, in a popular culture sense, less compassionate than Russell Brand? Yes, I would say I probably would be, yes, seen in that light. So maybe that's a one-up for Russell Brand. Okay, 5, doesn't take responsibility. Okay, well, I think I've answered that question already, in the sense that I believe we should live in a consequential world. So what I mean by that is, if I don't take responsibility, I should suffer the full consequences of not taking responsibility. Now you'll know where my loyalties lie here straight away, by the person that I quote. Now, it was a woman, but still that doesn't satisfy the Liberals, because of course it was a woman on the right political sphere. So by default, you're demonized straight away. But Aaron Rand did make that famous quote, of course. One may deny reality for as long as they like, but one will never be able to deny the consequences of denying reality. And I very much advocate that. Now, again, I'm just not into this victimhood. It's ethical. It's responsible for people to live in a consequential world, and take responsibility for the bad choices, the bad decisions that they've made in their life, and not dump the consequences on everybody else. So, again, we can only, from looking at what we assume is truly Russell Brand and his public profile, take your own guess, what his views are on that. Considering he's always talking about compassion and how we always should have compassion. Actually, just while I'm on that subject, a good example, something I seriously disagree with Russell Brand. As a recovering alcoholic myself, and he's NA as far as I know. He's saying we should have compassion. We should have compassion. I can assure you, from my own experience, it wasn't compassion that saved my life. What saved my life was the truth. What saved my life was knowing that there was consequences for the life choices that I was making. Understanding that is what saved my life. But if everyone just kept telling me, it's okay, it's not your fault, let's just have more compassion. No, I had to eat. There was a very, very sharp learning curve, which I learned, and the very fact that I'm here today is testament to the success of that. But that it wasn't out of compassion. It was about being given tough love and being told you and only you are responsible for the situation you find yourself in. And it's only when you can accept that you can work to get out of it or make changes in your life. So I think myself and Russell Brand are very different in that regard because he's a big advocate of compassion, like most of liberal Hollywood, of course. So, moving on. Number 6, trivial sex is actually a trait of sociopaths. And I'm afraid, yes again, I'm afraid I think I win this one. Well, I'm going to hazard a guess. I'm going to give you a figure now. You can choose to believe this or not. That's entirely up to you. But I've only ever slept with 3 different women in my entire life. Ever. Full stop. So, again, we'll let Russell Brand, I don't know about his promiscuity. I'm going to assume he had a bit of a better success rate than mine. But actually, that is a trait of sociopaths. They like to sleep around quite a lot, seemingly. Anyway, moving on. Adolescent conduct problems. Now, guilty right there. I was kicked out of the education system at a very young age. Yes, had a very big problem with the education system. In fact, I'll go as far as saying I might be damning myself, but I don't regret it for one moment. I hated the education system. I just found it conformist, suffocating, dominant, and ultimately a lie at the end, if I'm quite honest. But so yeah, for me, how I perceived it had more to do about indoctrination than education. So that's been my experience, and it might be a tie between myself and Mr. Brand on this one because I believe he didn't have a great career in education either. Number 8, egoism and grandiosity. Oh God! Again, I think I lose this one. Well, from a rational perspective, who do you think has the greater ego? Me, a chippy, or a guy that can stand up in front of an audience, in front of 10,000 people and do a gig in front of 10,000. I think he wins this one. I'm gonna put that out there. But anyway, I could be wrong. Number 9. A high sensation seeker. I think I lose here again. I'm afraid, yeah. In fact, if anything, I am really, really suspicious of highs, these emotional peaks and troughs, because I find that, the worst periods of my life that I can remember back were these enormous euphoric peaks. And even when I was euphoric, I just knew that I was burning the candle at both ends, and it was just going to be equaled, if not often many times surpassed, by this catastrophic, crush-decked trough. So it was like euphoria, chronic depression, euphoria, chronic depression, and it is a horrific existence to live in that. So I tend to aim towards flatlining now all the time. But I'm not a big sensation seeker. I just try to flatline. That's my story anyway. That's what I aim for, should I say? So I think I'm very much neutral in that regard. Although I would have had a great history of seeking sensation. So is my sociopathic tendencies cured in that regard? Maybe they are to some degree, but remember, history ain't over, and hopefully I have as much time left in this world as what's passed before me. So, last but not least, number 10, compulsive lying. Oh, God, Mr. Brand. Ooh, ooh. Well, of course, lying is, it's an objective thing. Like, I mean, rarely does the person who's lying think they're lying. And then again, we have to break that down yet again. Is the lie being told on a conscious level, or is it more of kind of a passive thing on a subconscious level? So it starts to get very, very grey. But have I told porcupines in my life? Absolutely, absolutely. Sometimes I've lied completely through my teeth. When teachers used to catch me smoking, have I cut? No, no, absolutely. And I looked them in the eye, And in many other cases, have I paid my tax all the time, on time? No. Have I occasionally broke the speed limit? Not to libel myself now or anything, but I wouldn't say I'm a compulsive liar. No. In fact, if something more often than not that I get criticised for is that I'm a little too honest, or should I say, for example, people come up and ask me what my opinion is. I can't put it into a context. I'm not well versed socially. So if people ask me a question, they just get the answer. That's it, full stop. And they're often shocked. So like if a kid, and it has happened to me, comes up and asks me, about Santa Claus, I'll just tell that child, no, Santa Claus doesn't exist. For God's sake, that's all a big fairy tale. I just can't relate. People look at me in horror then, and I'm, okay, I get it. That's a social norm that I'm just not good at. If people ask me a question, I give them the answer. That's it. And even I just can't put it in a social context. I'm going to again hazard a guess, but I would say Mr. Brand is probably better at that, more versed in the social aspect and the airs and graces of dealing with society and people in general than I am. So is that compulsive lying? I mean, if somebody asks me a question and because we're in the wrong place at the wrong time and I answer that question directly, is that lying? I don't know. Anyway, that's our 10 anyway. So I just wanted to throw it out there because the main reason I'm making this video is just to repeat, I'm just not a big believer of this good versus evil narrative that's being pushed by the left and political hemisphere. I really do believe, we're all, quite divisive in our ways, and for one political, rather than both sides just respect that we disagree on certain issues, but there is a political apparatus, there is a system in place that allows for that, and it's called democracy, So I respect the left takes a particular position as an economic policy, a social policy, or so on and so forth. I don't try to shut down them, for their value system, but I don't honestly believe that is replicated towards me. Anytime I open my mouth and express my democratic right to free speech and express my political opinions and economic opinions, I'm called a bigot, I'm called a racist, I'm called a homophobe, I get judgment, I'm just merely, from that perspective, I'm just merely saying, here's me, a person on the right. There's Mr. Brand's, my nemesis, should I say. And who do after going through this list, Now remember, the higher you score on this list, the higher is your chances of being a sociopath. So, in your opinion, who has won? Who has won this contest, for the want of a better word? Anyway, that's my video. Please leave comments in the boxes. I always read the comments, and subscribe, and talk to you later. Have a good one.